War at Sea, an Introduction Part 2. In this part of the video, I'm going to take you through some fleet building tips, and then we're going to dive right into the action. Let's get started. In War at Sea, you start out choosing how big of a game you want to play. Once you determine your maximum game size, those points correlate to how many ships you could choose for your fleet. Depending on your game scenario, objective markers are used to track how many points you can win during the course of the game. Objective markers are typically placed halfway on the board so that each fleet has to compete to achieve those points. Victory conditions can be customized so that the players have to achieve objectives as well as gaining points from destroying enemy vessels. Axis and Allies has many different ship types available to use during the course of the game. It's each player's choice to decide which ships they want to use in their fleet. Choosing the right combination of fleet and strategy against your opponent is half the fun of playing the game. Now we'll briefly take you through some of the different types of vessels. Carriers and escort carriers are essential for launching aircraft across your enemy and have various skills and abilities that you will find useful during the game. Battleships are by far your strongest but most expensive vessel in the game. They can provide anti-air cover as well as destroy any surface target. Heavy and light cruisers are a good mid-range alternative. Heavy cruisers typically boast more firepower than light cruisers and more armor, but less than battleships, and cost a lot less. The next ship type are destroyers. Destroyers are very versatile in that they can take on a number of roles such as smokescreen, sub-hunting, and fleet protection. Submarines are very versatile and very deadly if used in packs. Torpedoes, when used effectively, are very devastating to a fleet, battleship, etc. The last type is called auxiliary. Auxiliary ships are typically used in scenario-based games, although some ships have special abilities that you may find useful in your regular games. Auxiliary ships can be transports, PT boats, that type of thing. Now, one of the main aspects of the game is aircraft. There are various types of aircraft, going from fighters, dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and land-based or patrol bombers. Make sure you choose the right aircraft because you can win or lose your game. First up is fighters. Fighters are extremely useful in shooting down enemy aircraft. They can be used in the air defense phase to take out enemy aircraft and air attack phases on surface vessels. Make sure you have enough fighters. The next aircraft type are dive bombers. Dive bombers are extremely important as they carry large bombs that can do a lot of damage to surface vessels. Make sure you protect your dive bombers with fighter cover. Next type of aircraft are torpedo bombers. Torpedo bombers can do a lot of damage to surface vessels with their torpedoes. Torpedoes hit on a 5 or a 6 dice roll, but a 6 dice roll will give you 2 hits. Lastly, we have patrol bombers and land-based bombers. Land-based bombers and patrol bombers have to be based on a land air base on the map. These type of bombers have to rearm every other turn and cannot be played during that time. The upside to patrol and land-based bombers is that they have some unique abilities and attacks that the other aircraft don't have. For more information, check out the stat cards and the rule manual. Now let's get into the fun part, the tactics. First tip is aircraft and carriers, how to use them properly. Here's a typical Axis and Allies map that comes with the game. You'll see some land air bases at the bottom and the top right corners. We're going to start the scenario with a carrier and aircraft and just show you how the best way to approach the first offensive is. Generally, after the first move in the game, the carrier will be only a couple of squares from the starting line on the left side if you are player 1. We're going to use all 3 type of aircraft except for the patrol bomber for this example. For this, the basic rule of thumb is use as many aircraft as you can to hit one target, at the same time keeping in mind the board and what the enemy has as far as their fleet goes. The biggest thing to watch out for in the enemy side is how many aircraft they have versus yours, what type of aircraft, and where they plan to hit. Players won't know really what the other player is going to do, however they may be able to see how many aircraft they have at the beginning of the game. Whoever won the initiative roll is the one who goes last. After ship movement phase, you get down to aircraft placement phase. This is where you're going to alternate with your opponent placing aircraft. So one tip for the air placement phase would be to place all your aircraft on one target and try and take that target down. Now that target can be up to you, whether it's a high level target or a low level target, but typically the more ships you take out during the game is the better. Another option would be to target their aircraft and try and take as many of those out, because that really helps you. Let's see what happens when we place some aircraft here. So the enemy has launched their fighter against our attack with the dive bomber. So one of two things is going to happen here. The fighter will either abort our dive bomber or he'll destroy the dive bomber, which basically renders our attack useless. However, we're going to continue placing units and see how the final setup looks. So their final fighter is set up to defend against the torpedo bomber we sent in, or the other dive bomber, depending on which one they want to attack with. And lastly, we're going to send in our fighter to provide air cover. Now we have a little bit of air superiority here, so the numbers don't quite match, but again, they have a battleship and a sub, so we're actually outmatched a little. So at this point, the air defense phase would start. The air defense stage starts. Let's have a closer look and see what's going on. Our fighter is going to do an air defense roll to defend our bombers. He targets the first enemy fighter. Rolling over the vital armor, we destroy the fighter. But don't worry, as this is all taking place at the same time, player 2 will have a chance to fight back. And that is all for the air defense phase for player 1, as we have no other units that can attack. At this point, the other enemy fighter has no choice. He has to go after the torpedo bomber, because if he goes after the bomber, he's going to get a -1 penalty. The enemy player is hoping that his anti-aircraft fire from the carrier and from the battleship will take out the remaining fighters and bombers. Player 2 gets an abysmal roll against the torpedo bomber and doesn't even abort it. Second fighter now rolls. The enemy fighter rolls over the armor value and aborts the aircraft. Now at this point you would think that the Iowa could open up on the attacking fighters and bombers, but however, the Iowa only has a range 0 AA defense. The carrier now will open its AA guns on the dive bomber, as it's the biggest threat. Amazingly, the dive bomber survives the AA defense. Air defense phase is now done. Now we're on to air attack phase. Our dive bomber takes a run at the carrier and scores big time. 11 successes on the last roll. One last hope for the carrier is a survivor bonus. Nope, doesn't get it. So that's the end of round 1 for the air defense and air attack phases of this game. Let's now go back and recap some of the main strategies.